Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week, along with some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends, we review films either current or classic on this movie podcast. However, this week, we're not coming at you with one or two or three or four movie reviews. We're actually coming at you with our top 10 films of 2024. That's right. Finally, our retrospective episode. Listeners have been asking us for like 6 weeks now, when are we going to get your top 10 lists? And there were a few other films that were coming out past the first of the year. Expanding wide out of limited markets. So we held off a little bit so we could see as much as we possibly could before bringing our list to you. But the time to do so has arrived. Before we get to those lists and some of yours, listeners, let me introduce you to my wonderful co-host. Jim Pugliafico is with us here in the virtual studio. And by that, I mean 20 feet down the hall with three cats in his office. I've only got one, but hi, babe. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, babe. I'm really excited about this show. We look forward to this one every year. We're kind of putting a bow on 2024 as far as our picks go. And, we coming down to the wire, thinking about, which movies are going to make our lists. And, as we got closer to today's recording date, that pressure built and built and built. And finally we're here. But I'm excited to share these and see, some lists from some of our listeners, our movie fans, our friends that are also movie fans. So yeah, I'm super excited for this show.
Indeed, it should be a good one. And speaking of listener lists, some of you shared your list with us ahead of the show. We've got those. We're going to be reading some entries from those lists as we get deeper into the episode. But if you're joining us live right now, which is Tuesday, January 21st at 6:44 p.m. Tucson time, relative to when you may be listening. Feel free to jump into the live chat and let us know your top 10 lists, or if you just have, one, two, three favorite films of 2024, feel free to drop those as well. And we'll be reading some of those off later in the episode too. So be on the lookout for those. Pop those into the chatter. Just say hello. A bunch of people are already hanging out with us. I see them on the bridge there. So welcome everyone. Glad to have you. One more voice that this show would be totally incomplete without. The wonderful William Lindis is here too. Will, how are you?
Hey, Brad. Hey, Jim. Doing great. This is my favorite episode of the year whenever we do this one. This is such a celebration of film. A lot of times we come in here and we've talked about whatever the most recent thing we've seen in. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and we really deep dive it. But as far as we're concerned, this is all hits, no misses, all bangers, no filler. Like, as far as our lists are concerned, this is all celebration here tonight, baby. It was as is often the case, a hell of a year of film. Lot of great films, big, small, everywhere in between. And I'm especially excited because some years I feel like I can come in here and have my finger a little bit on the pulse of Brad and Jim and think like, all right, I think I know what Brad's putting on this list. I think this one, and obviously there's surprises. We don't share our lists beforehand. This year, I was really racking my brain trying to think about what types of films I think they're going to put on there. And I've got maybe one or two picks per. So I'm going to be just as surprised as everyone else is today. So bring these lists on. Let's do this. This is going to be fun.
Indeed. I am so curious. I think I know like some of the films on y'all's lists, but not necessarily where they fall. And Jim and I were kind of working on our lists during a road trip this weekend, and we were like embargoing talk about what we were picking and where, and it was very frustrating because I was like, damn it, I want to know now. I have to wait till Tuesday, but it is Tuesday. Thank goodness we've got a lot of great films to celebrate on the show this week. Just a reminder for everyone, I know I literally just said it like a minute ago, but we are soliciting your lists or your favorite films of 2024. Be sure to drop those into the chat as we start counting down ours. And a little later into the episode, we'll be reading from those lists. So if you want yours included, feel free to put those in. And listen, if you're listening through the digital, tape delay divide that we talk about, maybe you're accessing the show a week from now, 2 weeks, 2 years from now. We still want to hear your lists. Feel free to drop those into the comments on the YouTube video or Facebook, however you're accessing this recording of the show. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., just go to our Facebook page because fuck other platforms that are run by other people that we don't like. Find us on Facebook, find us on YouTube, drop it in the comments, and we'll still love to read those. Anyway, Jim, Will, we got a whole lot to talk about. Are you ready to start breaking these?
So much so.
I am. I'm so ready.
All right. Well, then let's get this party bus a rolling. We are going to start with number 10. Actually, Jim, I feel like we need your that thing you were doing a couple episodes ago when we were talking about our most anticipated films. You were doing that like deep, rumbly, dramatic.
The Chris Lopez voice. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a Chris Lopez voice, unfortunately. I wish I did, but I'll do my best bad impression of that. How's that?
We love
It'll
it.
be great.
We love to hear
All
it.
right. Let's hear it.
Are we ready for it? Are we ready to jump in?
We're ready.
Number 10.
Totally. All right. Number 10 is going to you first, Jim. What was your number 10 film of the year? And of course, spoiler free on all of these because these might be films people want to check out, with virginal fortitude.
Yeah. Well, I did work my list down to 10 of my top movies this year, and we'll probably get into honorable mentions later too in the show. I think, Brad, you mentioned that. And, basically, I use Letterboxd to do the most of the heavy lifting to get me like 90 or 85% there, and then I massaged the list from there to make sure the top 10 were really my top 10. And there's some other things that happen too, because I don't just rate movies, but I rate like series that I watch, docuseries that I might have watched, because they're on Letterboxd too. But I don't necessarily include those in my top 10 films of 2024. So there's some massaging that goes on. So everything you're going to see for me is kind of a movie or a film that was released in this year. And here we go with my number 10. My number 10 is a huge surprise for me. It's, by the way, animation is going to play a big part in my list this year, which is sort of not really a super surprise. Usually it's documentaries that drive my list. This year it's animation. And Transformers 1 is my number 10. This is a film that I'll be honest, I'm not as much into Transformers franchise and lore as even my other two hosts here. But so I went into this film not really expecting much, because I got to admit, like most of the Transformers movies we've seen have not been great, have not really captured me, have been more effective at putting me to sleep than anything else. But this movie really kept my attention. It surprised me. I was shocked at how good both the story, the screenplay, script, animation, and voices were in this story. This is a solid number 10 for me. I kept looking at my list saying, can Transformers really be on my top 10 list for a movie year? And I'm like, fuck yes, it can. That movie totally deserved it. I don't think it got quite the attention that it really deserved amongst the other great films this year. But Transformers 1 was a huge surprise for me, and I fully enjoyed it.
Jim, can you imagine like going back in time and talking to yourself basically any year where one of the Michael Bay Transformers movies came out and saying, you know,
It,
in 2024, a Transformers film is going to make your top 10? Like, you would have just looked at yourself and said, bullshit, future me.
Yeah,
So I love
exactly.
this.
I never would have
what
believed it. I would have been like, there's no way these movies can produce anything that's coming close to my list. But this movie did. I think it hits all the right buttons. I think it's a great movie for all ages. Whether you're a fan of the franchise, you don't have to be a huge fan of the franchise. I think the story is solid. It's a great relationship movie too, was I think the biggest surprise for me. So yeah, I'm all about it. I will defend this pick all the way.
All right. Well, Jim, thanks so much for sharing your number 10. Not sure if that one will show up elsewhere in the episode, but very surprising to hear that a Transformers movie, of all things, make your top 10 list of the
Mm-hmm.
year. That's so crazy.
Right.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's move on down to Will. Will, similar to Jim, tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, about how you came to your list, how you put it together, and what your number 10 slot is filled with.
Absolutely. So the way I do my list is it's kind of based off of feels, right? It's based off of vibes. It's based off of like where things are in exactly this point in time as we're having this discussion, right? So I track everything on Letterboxd with like star ratings, which honestly, the star ratings are not there to be absolute. You know, the difference between like a 5-star movie and a 4.5 and a 4, again, it's sort of a gut pull, right? But what it does let me do is sort of pull everything above a certain kind of number and say, all right, these are the ones I'm dumping on the table. But now that I'm at the end of the year, let's really um, reevaluate them. And there's no one criteria that goes into it. Sometimes it's based off of this was crafted incredibly well. Sometimes this hit me in the feels incredibly well. Sometimes it's this performance really spoke to me. This animation was beautiful. The plot was wonderful. Something about the themes worked for me. All of those things, none of those things, there's no way to fully compare them objectively. So it all comes down to that subjective feel. So you have to kill darlings. And that was the hard part for me. I trimmed it down to 25. Then I trimmed it down to 10. And even the ones that are in my 11 through 20 spot would be a hell of a top 10. But we have to kill some darlings. So the ones that survived start with my number 10, which is actually a movie I plugged. I feel like it was just a few weeks ago. And it is a movie by Ryosuke Hamaguchi called Evil Does Not Exist. This is the same director who did another film that was in my top 10. I want to say it was 2 or 3 years ago, called Drive My Car. Wonderful film, wonderful film. This is sort of it's classified as a coming of age drama about this little village outside of Tokyo where all the inhabitants, they have like a city hall, they have school. I mean, it's not like completely rural or anything like that, but they have started getting these people coming in who want to take over parts of kind of the woods and the forest and turn it into like a glamorous camping or glamping ground. And so a lot of this film really has to deal with the push and pull between the people that want to develop this area versus the people that live there, as well as the push and pull of all of those things versus sort of the nature that already exists there. There are parts of this that sort of play out like a procedural as they're going through city hall meetings and discussing things. There's part of it that really delve into character work. There is a stunning sort of final 20 minutes of this movie that really had me just like rocked back in my seat, sort of thinking about kind of what they did and how they got there. On top of all of that, this is just one of the most beautifully shot films of the year. This guy can't miss. Evil Does Not Exist is 100% my kind of jam. And you can find it. It's available. It's available for streaming. If you you can rent it for like a few bucks on some of the different platforms. It's also for free if you happen to have Criterion Channel, which not a lot of people do. But if you have that platform, you don't have to pay to rent it right now. So yeah, it's the goods. It's my number 10.
Nice, Will. What's the director's last name?
His name is Ryusuke Hamaguchi.
Hamaguchi. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So failure does not exist for this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Failure does not exist. I mean, at this point, he just keeps making these films that like land at the top of my lists.
Yeah.
And again, it's because he knows how to tell a story with patience, but also let it still have like a sort of like a tension that kind of builds and builds and builds into its own type of kinetic force.
Cool. Very cool. Did not get to see this one yet. And I'm going to cover a few films that I haven't gotten to see yet this year that are obviously not on my list or honorable mentions because just flat ran out of time and available, access to movies. So
yeah,
it goes. Yeah.
Look, listen, like by some counts, there's 400 to 500 new release films that come out each year. No one's watching that many new releases. There is no single person who has seen every single new release that comes out a year. So you have to pick and choose your battles, right?
To be fair, we tried, right? We gave it a good college effort. Brad and I drove 200 miles round trip this last Sunday night to see a movie, to see if it was going to make our lists. And because it was only playing like up in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Oh, wow.
And stayed overnight and then drove home. We'll talk about that movie. We'll talk about that movie later.
I think I know which one it is. I've got a hunch. We'll talk.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If you total it up, it was like 4 hours of driving, a $200 hotel stay, $60 for 2 movie tickets and concessions. We invested a lot to see that.
You invested a lot, and it sounds like maybe you only got about 5 cents out of it.
Not something like maybe.
Okay.
Maybe or
maybe
a penny,
maybe not even, maybe 4.5.
I don't know. Yeah, well, we'll have to figure that out. In any event, Will, thanks so much for sharing your number 10. Like the two of you, I approach my list based on a couple of factors. Feelings is a big one. How much did a film make me feel? Did I cry? Did it, somehow pull off a miracle and make me laugh? Because for some reason, I'm a total dick when it comes to comedies, and they don't usually work for me. But the other part of it is how much did the film go out of its way to maybe try to like do something new or put an interesting spin on an old idea or, like advance filmmaking as opposed to just, churning out something that's so rote at this point that AI could and literally is doing it. I saw an article yesterday from a director who was like, I plugged 10 ideas into ChatGPT and had it write movie synopsis, and I'm going to make one of them. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Okay, here we go, I guess. In any event, hopefully all the films on my list for 2024 were not produced by AI. But I kind of did the same thing with Letterboxd. And Will, I'll always forever attribute using Letterboxd to you. So that is a William Lindis legacy item. I've been using it for a couple of years now to track all my films, and it made it so easy because, and we're not in any way sponsored by Letterboxd, but I want to point out for me, especially as someone with ADHD and I get overwhelmed by too much information, like trying to look at a list of every movie I've seen for the year and then like rank it. No way. It destroys my brain. I can't do it. But because I rate each one when I see it, I can just filter my diary to sort it from like 5 stars to 1 star and only include the movies for the year that we're talking about. And I've pretty much got my list. The only thing is like this year, I think I had like 4 or 5 stars. So I had to figure out like, of those 4, which one is number 4, which one's 3, which is 2, which is 1. But then anything after that 10 slot was just honorable mentions. So, it took me an hour in the car to do my list this year, as opposed to, I think, like 9 hours a couple years ago of agonizing back and forth. Anyway, so I've got my list. I'm ready to rock. And number 10 on my list is a film that we actually we saw after the holidays, after we got back from our cabin trip. It was one of those that unfortunately just was not playing before the end of the year here in Tucson. We didn't have access to it. It is a film starring Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson and Antonio Banderas, and it's a movie all about kink, y'all. We talked a little bit about this, I think, a couple weeks ago. I don't remember if it was a plug or what, but uh, Baby Girl blew me away. It really surprised me. Going into that film, as a self-professed kinkster, I'm not an expert. After 8 years, I'm still learning every day. But I was a little worried after seeing the horrible trek that was the 50 Shades movies, that this was just going to be 50 Shades with Nicole Kidman. And I was actually very pleasantly surprised. This film gets a lot right. It's not perfect, but it does a really good job. I think my camera may have frozen. Uh, yeah,
Probably.
not sure
Yeah.
what's up there. I'll troubleshoot it. I have a really stupid expression on my face right now in the frozen image. That's awesome. In any event, Baby Girl did a really great job, I think, of kind of showing us an interesting power exchange dynamic between a powerful CEO woman and a young upstart intern. It really kind of flips the typical script or the typical dynamic on its head and does some really fucking cool things. So this one, it beat out my top honorable mention now, I guess, and I'm sorry to that movie that it just barely squeaked you out. But you can thank a lot of Antonio Banderas' hairy chest for popping you down the list. Sorry about that.
And we often do.
Right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely one that I considered on my list as well. And, it's one of those ones kind of near the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 area. And as I did the shuffling, we'll have to see if it came out or not. But yeah, good pick. I did love that movie. It was kind of a world that I was amazed to see portrayed on film, especially with somebody like Nicole Kidman. I thought it was great. I thought it like flipped power dynamics beautifully, and kind of put it out there. I don't know if it landed with everybody. I think a lot of people who don't know some of the concepts behind, kink and how it should play out, maybe might not have landed with some of those people. But great pick, Brad.
Yeah, love this pick. And I especially was blown away by Harris Dickinson in this. I think we did this one in our catch-up episode.
We did.
And Nicole Kidman's good. Antonio Banderas is good, but Harris Dickinson, is someone that we've started to see really build his career from Triangle of Sadness and Beach Rats in recent years. He's a commanding performance in this. He smolders. He goes toe-to-toe with Nicole Kidman. Great chemistry on screen. I really liked him in this. And yeah, I think more films that highlight the complexities of non-traditional relationships, I think that's a net positive when we see that type of representation on screen.
I absolutely agree. For sure. And real quick, we've got a couple of comments in the live chat. Tom is here. He says, "Hey, peeps."
Hey,
Good to see
Tom.
you.
Hey,
Welcome.
Peep.
And the ever handsome, the ever sexy Ben Woolley says, "Hi, my handsome bear friends from cold Oklahoma City." He's got a little freezing face. Yeah, oof, Ben, stay warm. Wish we were there to help cuddle you, friend.
Could definitely use some of that warmth. Yeah, it was down in the 20s here today, which, yeah, I know there's other colder spots, but it's cold for me. When it gets to 23, I'm like, it's too cold.
Pretty much the whole country is feeling some really weird, cold, snowy weather. Snow in Florida. Wow, weird.
Yeah, it's just like the last couple of days. It's like hell froze over or something.
Yeah, something crazy happens. In any event, Ben also says Brad is MIA. I am here. My camera is just Chrome updated and is doing this weird permissions thing, and I'm trying to get it working again. So hopefully my bearded mug will be back on screen soon. But Ben, 9 degrees. Yikes. All right, let's move on to the next slot in our list. Jim, set this one up.
Number
And
9.
yes, I love it. What was your number 9, Jim?
My number 9 is a film that we also talked about, I think, in our catch-up episode. One that is a really cool coming-of-age film called My Old Ass. That film with a very funny name. Or a weird name that probably kept a lot of people from seeing this film, unfortunately. But yeah, My Old Ass was a really great film this year. We've got Aubrey Plaza in this one, who is great. I just loved the whole concept of, your older self coming back and being able to talk to like your teenage self, and imparting some pearls of wisdom without giving away the store, without like altering your life too much. It's a really cool concept, a really sweet film. I thought the screenplay was great, and the script, and Aubrey Plaza is great in it. I want to see her in more stuff. Hopefully we will soon. But yeah, number 9 for me is My Old Ass.
Jim, when you were talking about your number 10 pick, Transformers 1, did Aubrey Plaza show up to you like on a mushroom camping trip as your future self and tell you that was going to be on your list?
No, she didn't, because we never got to talk about that. We just didn't get that far. Yeah.
You didn't.
She didn't stick
macro
around.
dose-
She didn't stick around for long enough.
You didn't macro dose with a future version of yourself. Okay.
I would
Yeah,
have
this
but yeah.
this one didn't make my list and didn't make my honorable mentions either, but that's not saying it's a bad movie. It was really good. It's just
No.
competition's really tight in 2024. So this made it up there, though. I enjoyed that film a lot. And Jim, I know how much you love coming of age movies, and it does not surprise me at all that this landed on your list.
Yeah.
Solid choice.
Yeah, and you mentioned, not a bad movie. None of these movies we're going to mention on any of our lists or any of our listener lists are bad movies, right? These movies
Right.
were appreciated by us and by our listeners, and they all had something to offer. So that's why we love this episode so much. We're talking about movies that are awesome, or at least awesome to us. So
And it would
yeah.
be boring as hell if we had the exact same picks in the exact same spots, right?
It would.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We have different takes on what a good film is, or what a great film is, or what a Brad film, a Jim film, a Will film are. And obviously there's Venn diagram overlaps in the middle of those types of things. But I love sort of like these films getting a chance to celebrate. My Old Ass isn't on my top 10 list. It is a very good film that I enjoyed the hell out of because it scratches that feeling of, I don't know, like early middle-aged nostalgia that I feel like, I'm kind of creeping into, as I'm in my 40s now, and I start, it's not hard to like kind of think back and say like, gosh, half of my life ago, I was still like a legal age drinking adult, and what if I could go back and tell myself, some life lessons,
Yeah.
I think that's so incredibly compelling, and this movie does it in such a compelling way.
For sure. So this is funny. We said we were going to limit ourselves because this show sometimes runs long every year. We're barely into number 9, and we're already half an hour into the show, guys.
We're gonna move it.
Maybe we'll get some overlap. I think
maybe. I'm always curious because at the end we tend to bank a bunch of time because a lot of the same movies end up on lists, maybe in different positions. But I'm curious to see what's going to happen tonight. Will, what was your number 9?
My number 9 is a film that came out towards the very beginning of the year. It's a movie called Love Lies Bleeding. So Love Lies Bleeding, directed by Rose Glass, who also did Saint Maud. It's starring Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien. So Kristen Stewart is sort of like the Um, daughter of like a guy who kind of does some like low level crimes and some other stuff that the film unfolds on. And also works at this gym. She meets this bodybuilder. That's the Katie O'Brien character, and the two form a romance. But as they become more and more entangled with one another, they also have to deal with the upcoming bodybuilding competition that the Katie O'Brien character is going for, as well as the criminal family sort of closing in on their potential happiness. This is a hell of a good movie. One, I love a good queer story. I love it when they are allowed to be unconventional. I think for a while there, I was really seeking just like the most positive representations possible because there was none, but we got plenty of those now. We've got the Hallmark versions of the gay romance story. So now I want stuff that's messy and over the top and weird, and I want us to be allowed to have those types of relationships on screen as well, and we get that here. There's even some surrealism that comes into play that just absolutely takes your breath away once they start doing some things that make you go like, are they really doing this? Are they really doing this? And it's like, yeah, they're really doing this. It's called Love Lies Bleeding. It is just such a creative, wonderful movie. Again, it's been towards the top of my list since the very beginning of the year, and it's had its like claws sunk in. I mean, since what, February? Like whenever it was when we first saw that a year ago.
Reminds me well of like an early Coen Brothers almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Great pick.
Nice.
Okay,
All right.
babe, yours.
My number 9 film was directed by George Miller and stars Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth, and that, of course, is Furiosa. Furiosa, not Furiosa, or is it Furiosa? Not Furiosa. I don't know. It's Furiosa. Whatever. When we saw Mad Max Fury Road years and years and years ago at South by Southwest, I fell in love with the Charlize Theron Furiosa character, and I was so curious about her life before running into Mad Max and everything that happened in that film. And when we heard that George Miller was going to do a Furiosa film, I got fucking stoked. But I'm like, this is about her like when she's a teenager or like early 20s. Like, Charlize Theron looks pretty fucking good, but like not that good. What are they going to do? And when it came out that Anya Taylor-Joy was going to be playing this version of Furiosa, I think we were like fresh off Queen's Gambit, and I was like riding that Anya Taylor-Joy high. And she did not disappoint. Powerhouse performance. That's a cliche phrase, but what the fuck? I don't care. It's true. She did a phenomenal job here. And for me, Chris Hemsworth was absolutely unrecognizable as one of the antagonists of this film, and really appreciated that performance. I got to say, between his work in this movie and his voice work in Transformers 1, Jim, speaking of unrecognizable Chris Hemsworth, the dude has got some voice acting chops. He's pretty great. But also the prosthetic chops that they added on to make his face look a little different. In any event, this is a great action adventure movie. The cinematography, phenomenal. The sound is fantastic. I'm so glad that we got this film. I don't know if George Miller will continue to, revisit this character. Who knows? But I'm really, really glad that we got this one. It made my number 9.
This one here is my number 11. It was the last one to get the chop right. I think I messaged you beforehand and said, like, I'm down to 11 films for my top 10. And so there was a world an hour ago where Furiosa crept into the top 10 for me. It didn't, but it's at the very top of my honorable mentions. You're absolutely right. This movie kicks ass start to finish.
I was so curious, Will, what that movie was, and now I know. That's fantastic.
I will reserve comment for now, other than to say, great pick, babe.
Aha.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well, moving on down the list, Jim, why don't you kick us off on our next slot?
Number 8.
Love that
My number
voice so much.
8 is I told you that animation was going to play a big part in my list this year after I talked about Transformers 1 in my 10 spot. Um, The Wild Robot. This is a movie about an intelligent robot that gets shipwrecked on an island and has to survive amongst animals and the harsh environment. And I really kind of fell in love with this movie. I knew from the moment seeing, I think the second trailer, that this was going to be kind of my type of movie, and it kind of was good enough at least to be kind of midway up my list. Well, further up my list at number 8. Um, this one, Pedro Pascal, Lupita Nyong'o, Kit Connor lend their voices here. This is just a really cool, warm story. I think from DreamWorks. Is that right? I think it's a DreamWorks film.
It is. Yep.
DreamWorks animation. Beautiful, wonderful soundtrack to this film. Some really moving stuff in here. This is a movie you feel, as we were talking about earlier. Movies that make me feel something, anything. Could be, just an emotional tearing at my heart to fear, if it's like a horror movie or a thriller. Movies that make me feel something will definitely get my attention, and this one did. It's called The Wild Robot, and I've got it in the number 8 spot.
Yeah, this is a damn good one. Didn't end up in my top 10. But you're right. This was a really strong year for animation. Very strong year for animation. And a lot of the ones that were the most surprising and most compelling were the ones that weren't necessarily even part of franchises, which is exciting. And I have a feeling we might be talking about some of those. We'll see. But yeah, this one is a damn good pick. This one was one that I saw at a film festival, and it was an early morning pick, and it was one of those ones where I'm just sort of sitting in the theater surrounded by a bunch of other like diehard movie fans, all like sniffling and crying just in unison. Yeah. So good pick.
Yeah, Jim, definitely a really strong pick. Again, there's only so much room on our list for these things, but I have a feeling it might show up again somewhere. So maybe we'll bank some time here.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, what is your number 8?
My number 8 is one that I didn't get a chance to see until just a few weeks ago. This was one that was one of those that snuck in at the very, very end of the year and then didn't get to Austin until January, technically, but it's a 2024 release, so I'm counting it for this list. It's the new Brady Corbett movie, The Brutalist, starring Adrian Brody and Felicity Jones and Guy Pearce. It's set over a span of time, but kind of beginning sort of like post World War II Europe, sort of like in 1947-ish. There's this architect who flees from Budapest and comes to the U.S. and starts working with furniture building, but starts to gets an opportunity to start doing some home design and then eventually large structure design. And so it's a story of a person who is incredibly successful, incredibly skilled at what he does in this sort of like turning point in the United States, sort of like post-World War through kind of like the 60s. And so, but also how his story is always going to also be an immigrant story. And so no matter how successful or how talented he is going to be seen as lesser than by the rich people who he's paying to be creative on their behalf. Adrian Brody is just an absolute like beast in this movie. Great performance. This is another one of those movies where every frame's a painting. You can just start at any part of this movie and just see like one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen, one of the most tragic things you've ever seen, one of the most striking things you've ever seen. This is a long movie. It clocks in at 3.5 hours, but there is an intermission in it. So it goes to a still frame and counts down. You can get up and walk away for 15 minutes. That was kind of a fun experience in the theater. But yeah, The Brutalist it's the goods. And for a 3.5 hour movie, I didn't regret a single minute of it.
3.5 hours, that's nothing. I've watched 6-hour movies before. Well, come on.
Go beast mode. Now, was it 6 hours with no pee breaks?
No, because I watched it at home. It was streaming.
Watch it,
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got an intermission, so I got a pee break in this one.
Yeah.
Fortunately,
I heard that. This is one, Will, that I did not get to. It's not on my list because I did not get to see it yet. I think it just recently opened, maybe here in Tucson, and we had to make some hard choices about which movies we were going to see. I know Brutalist was getting a lot of positive buzz, and probably will see it. Just need to psych myself up for that 3.5, 4 hour experience. Me and my bladder. Yeah.
On our way back from seeing that other film we mentioned from Phoenix, we drove by the Loft, which is our indie theater here, and they also bring films like The Brutalist, and they were just putting up the name of the film on the marquee. They just opened it up. So we had to make a choice. We chose the other film, and I'm sure we'll catch up with Brutalist though, but seems like it's resonating with a lot of folks. So strong pick.
Okay, your number 8, Brad.
My number 8, this movie actually kind of surprised me a little bit because I was really fatigued with the superhero genre of films in general. I was super fatigued with Marvel properties in general. I was really fatigued with the Deadpool character. Very much so. But Deadpool and Wolverine absolutely fucking just smashed into my top 10. I can't believe one of these movies is my number 8 for this year, but I attribute a lot of that to shirtless, hairy-chested, sweating Hugh Jackman. Anytime he's panting like a spent leather daddy, I'm all about it. And we had a lot of that in this film. Really cool setup. I know, it's kind of tired with the whole like multiverse, multi-timeline thing, whatever. But it gave some really cool opportunities without getting into spoilers in case anyone hasn't seen it yet. To bring in some different characters. We had like Fox characters and Marvel characters, and just a confluence of many different things, including a fucking ton of Deadpool variants, which was neat to see. But this one, more of the usual Deadpool breaking the fourth wall. I mentioned earlier how difficult comedy is for me for some reason, but I think I laughed the hardest in a movie with this film than I have any film in the last 10 years. We went with some friends to see it, and one of them knows me very, very well. And he's like, I've never heard you laugh like that at anything. And I've known you for like 12 years. And I'm like, well, okay. But yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine was my number 8.
It has some of the best needle drops of the year, especially there's a Madonna song that's featured multiple times in the movie, and that particular it's a new arrangement of that song too. Like it's not just like kind of dropped right off of the 80s. And it's damn good. It's damn good. Like that version of that song gets stuck in my head a lot, just as I'm just walking around the house. Good pick. Good pick.
Good pick. And here's what I'll say about it. If a Marvel type property were to be on my list this year, it would be that one.
Oh.
Except it didn't quite make it. So if there was one this year, that was one that I took notice of. It was fun to watch, especially when my husband is entertained and laughing. That's wonderful.
If we could fit another one in here and make this like our 7.5 pick, maybe that would go for you.
But, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to our next slot, Jim.
Number 7. Okay, my number 7 is a movie that I was kind of looking forward to this year. It's called Long Legs. This is a a film by writer-director Osgood Perkins, who happens to be the son of Tony Perkins, who is from the Psycho fame. So he's got the horror, thriller, suspense bloodline going here. Longlegs was I really dug this movie. Nick Cage is in it, of course, and he's totally off the hook in this film. Blair Underwood's in this. What's her name, Brad? The one from the actor that played Sally Draper.
Kieran Shipka.
Yeah, Kieran Shipka makes an appearance in this. This is like another great version of similar to like the what am I thinking of? The I can't think of the movie with Jodie Foster.
Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, Silence of the
Yeah,
Lambs.
this is very much in the vein of Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
Just a little bit, even a little bit creepier, if you can imagine that. And Nick Cage goes a long way in characterizing the Longlegs character in here, and I really dug it. I'm honored to be able to include like a horror movie, a legit like horror thriller movie in my top 10, which is awesome. So yeah, Longlegs. Longlegs was the deal this year. And Osgood Perkins, by the way, his next movie looks bonkers also. It's called The Monkey or something. And I saw a trailer for it. It looks totally ridiculous. Like really they made a movie about like a mechanical toy monkey, but I have a feeling it's going to be pretty darn good.
Well, it's a I don't know if it's a direct
Stephen King,
sequel,
right?
but it's at least based off of a Stephen King story that actually had a 1988 movie called Monkey Shines, which also has the little monkey with the little symbols on it. Yeah, I'm excited for it. Good pick with Longlegs. Osgood Perkins is really putting in work on making some just really creative kind of stares down the barrel of the gun straight into your eyes sort of horror movies that I think are going to be not only like high quality overall, but also like are going to be popular. I think that people saw Longlegs, people talked about Longlegs, people are talking about the monkey. So I'm excited for that. I love horror and I love anyone that can get people talking about horror.
Cool.
Yeah, Jim, this pick has got some long legs on it because it didn't make it onto my list per se, but it definitely was a highlight film for me in 2024. Creep me the fuck out. And horror movies don't usually do that for me. So I definitely value it a lot. And I can never look at Nick Cage the same way again. So, there's that too.
Yeah. I'm not seeing it on many lists this year. A few here and there, but I think this one is not to be overlooked. I think this one, as far as horror, thriller, suspense stuff, is about as good as it gets.
Indeed. All right. Well, let's move on to Will. Will, what's your 7 slot?
My number 7 is a film by a director named Bertrand Bonello. The movie is called The Beast. It stars Léa Seydoux, who you've seen in Blue is the Warmest Color. She was in several of the new Daniel Craig James Bond movies. She played the character of Madeline in that. She was Lady Margot in Dune. Dune 2 specifically. So, you've seen her in some things. And she plays against George McKay, who was in 1917, I think is kind of the big thing that people would recognize him from. So the movie is sort of set into 3 time periods. The main one is sort of like set in like a near future thing where AI controls everything and human emotions are, generally looked upon as like not okay. And a woman wants to move forward with her career. And to do so, she's going to have to go through this DNA purging process to remove her emotions. And as part of that, it goes into their past lives and sort of makes them relive, confront, and then purges that stuff out of their past lives. So it then goes to 2 other stories, one of which is set in sort of like 19 like 10 or so, kind of like turn of the century, in sort of like a courtly type area, where she is a woman who meets this artist, and she's married, but the two of them strike up a conversation and then slowly have build out a relationship. And then there's another version of it which happens in like 2014, where a woman is an actress is house sitting, and this like kind of obsessed incels start stalking her. And it's really showing the story of these three people kind of interwoven over these different stories and times, and how each one of these connections both has some sort of like deeper emotional connection, and also like something that's inherently tragic when you look at the idea of like someone wanting to purge out kind of like the way they feel through things. It's really good. It's such a fucking good movie. They bounces in and out of these storylines in such a way that you're always kind of, it's not like one of those like like really confusing movies where as it bounces through, you're like, what the fuck is going on here? The different timepieces make it really easy to keep up with it. Yeah, it's called The Beast. Really,
is there
good.
a beast?
There is a beast, but it's not what you'd think it is.
Very good. Didn't catch up with that one, Will. Haven't figured out where it's even, if it's even playing around here, or is it streaming? Did you say?
It is streaming. It is now both for rent. I believe it's on HBO Max.
Okay.
I know it's on like Apple and Amazon. So it's in a few different places for either cheap rental or
going
stream.
on the list.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you, Will.
How about you, babe? You're number 7.
My number 7 is a film directed by Josh Cooley, starring Scarlett Johansson, Brian Tyree Henry, and Chris Hemsworth. A little film that may have come up earlier called Transformers 1. And going into this film, I got to tell you, the trailer that we saw for it originally was not great. It was a trailer that really just featured humorous clips from the film and made it look like a little kid, like funny movie. And this film is anything but that. I mean, little kids can watch it, sure. It has funny moments, sure, but really, this is a deep-seated drama, y'all, about Optimus Prime and Megatron, originally being friends and then becoming frenemies and then becoming sworn enemies, maybe, question mark. Don't want to spoil this film, but it kind of strikes me in the vein of like the old Smallville show in the 2000s, right? That pit like Clark Kent and Lex Luthor together as friends originally, and you see sort of their arc, right, to becoming sworn enemies. And I really, really loved the visuals in this film. It takes place on Cybertron, nothing to do with Earth. This is many, many years before the Autobots and Decepticons end up on Earth, and we learn a lot just about like the Transformers as a race of people and what their life is like. The voice acting here, Scarlett Johansson. I love and adore you, Scarlett, if you're listening. But Scarlett Johansson sounds like Scarlett Johansson. Brian Tyree Henry, little bit different, but still largely sounds like him, although he's fucking chilling as Megatron. But really, it's Chris Hemsworth who just absolutely just steals it here as Optimus Prime. Peter Cullen will always be Optimus Prime to me, you know, the OG Optimus. I've heard a lot of other people voicing Optimus in some of the other cartoons, including Transformers Earthspark, which is really good. I think I talked about that when we reviewed Transformers 1. But Chris Hemsworth, I think, is my second favorite Optimus ever. And I never fucking thought I'd say that about Thor. Also, Chris Hemsworth has been in 2 films now in my top 10, which is a little crazy to me. But Chris, congratulations. That's an honor that is unique to Bradley Harris. So hope you enjoy that. But yeah, Transformers 1 was fucking awesome. I bought it just as soon as it came out. I've watched it a couple times since. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, good pick. Glad we both have it on our list. it hit me in a way that I didn't expect. And so that's what has me
Yeah.
remembering it throughout the year, right? Because I think we saw it back in like early summer or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. On to our number 6 slot, Jim.
Number 6. In that slot, I've got, here we go again. My theme this year is animation, right? So my pick for number 6 is Inside Out 2. This is the sequel to Inside Out, of course. Following the continued growth, emotional growth primarily, of our character Riley. And I think what I loved about this movie is that it focuses on Riley's emotions as it did in the first movie, but now we've got more complex emotions creeping in, right? In the second iteration, more mature emotions starting to surface. And what I like about this series of movies is, the stories are great. They're both funny. They're both also emotional. It's got that great kind of Pixar uh, patina to it. You know what I mean? That gives it like you're in for a good ride with Pixar, but the way this film highlights and brings attention to like emotional and mental health, I think is astounding for a quote unquote kids movie. I think to get kids and families talking about how they feel about things and why they're feeling certain ways about things is a fantastic thing. And also, I just love the hell out of this movie. I don't know. We saw it at least twice, maybe 3 times if I remember right. Yeah, I mean, great voice work, of course. Amy Poehler, Maya Hawke is in this one. I think she's the daughter of Ethan Hawke, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, Inside Out 2 is my number 6.
Yeah, really love this one, especially like the inclusion of the new character Anxiety. As someone who medicates for it, I get it.
Sure.
So that was that's an easy thing to sort of relate to. But you can relate to all of these emotions in a different way. Either remembering what it was like to be a tween, because I think that's about kind of the age that Riley is, and how these emotions swelled within you, or how they still do that today when you're an adult. Good pick.
Indeed. This is another strong animation entry for 2024. I can totally see why this one made your list, Jim. All right. Let's move on to Will. Will, what was your number 6?
I'll continue with the animation theme. With I only ended up with one that made it into my top 10, but I think it's what I would consider to be the strongest piece of animation of the year, and that's the film Flow. We talked about this movie with a lot of glowing love on this show a few months back. This is an animated film with no dialogue, although it does have some animal sound effects, and it features a variety of different animals, most predominantly a kind of a main character cat. It's sometime in the future-ish or so, where the entire world is slowly being flooded, and these animals find themselves in a boat, having to work together despite their differences to rise above the tide. Beautiful animation, unconventional animation too. It sort of has this like sort of cell shading style look to it. Each of the characters they're animals. Like, these are not heavily anthropomorphized animals, although they do have expression on them that feels animalistic, but also feels like it's full of personality and life and vigor. Every character has that, and in different ways. The story is poignant and fun and thrilling and anxiety inducing in times, but it's always like a ride that you want to be on. Flow is absolutely the goods. I expect it to do well in sort of the awards lead up. I know it already did well at Golden Globes, and we've got Oscars coming up. I also expect it to do well. This is my called shot. This is the one film that I was most anticipating maybe seeing on y'all's lists. I don't know yet if we are going to see it, but I seem to remember all of us, like, this was maybe the most in tune I think we've been all year on one individual film. So it's Flow, and it's damn good.
Nice. Well, uh, definitely understand, from an animation standpoint, this one, pretty fucking pretty fucking rad, as the kids say these days. I don't know if this will show up on Jim's list at all, but Flow is also my number six. Will, so when I say it's pretty rad, I really and truly mean that. I enjoyed this one quite a bit, especially for a film with no dialogue whatsoever. It can be really hard to convey emotion just through like animal sounds and visuals, but this one absolutely did a tremendous job of that. I did cry during the film, which, for me, is one of the reasons films end up on my list, because that becomes so filled with emotion it has to leak out of my face. But yeah, they do a lot with this one. It's a I don't know. It's probably one of my favorite animated films in a really long time. So my number six as well.
Cool. Think we're in alignment, and I think Jim might be banking time. We could be wrong, but maybe.
Possibly. I don't know. We will see. All right. I think Jim might be having some technical difficulties or
Oh,
something. I saw him hold up a finger, saying to give him a moment.
it
So
was an index finger, not a middle finger. So just so people playing along at home, Jim wasn't like, "Fuck your choice."
I'm I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
yes, we got you. Welcome back.
I apologize.
We were
I had technical issues.
No worries. Flow was my number six as well, Jim. So
Oh, it was. So you're banking
it
time.
was. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I talked about it a bit, but yeah,
You did. I'm sorry I missed it. So yeah, I won't talk about it too much because I might be banking time later.
we thought that might be the case. All
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
then let's move on. We are down to our top five films of 2024. Jim, kick us
Number
off.
5. And for mine, it's Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. I think we talked about this one already, right? Somebody had it on their list already. And yeah, that was you, babe. Yes. Wow, this one we saw very early in the year, if I remember right. And it's really stuck with me. It's a vast, deep like sequel to the Mad Max Fury Road. Different kind of movie. It kind of I would say it's a little bit quieter movie, a little more introspective movie, but I really loved it. Anya Taylor-Joy, as we talked about, is great. Chris Helmsworth, again, mentioned on the show. This show is sponsored by Chris Helmsworth Inc. And but yeah, I mean, there's scenes in that movie I really can't that are still living in my mind. So, yeah, my number 5 is a solid, solidly in there. Furiosa, Mad Max saga.
See, we were at number nine, so we were only half an hour in, and we're like, God, the show's going to be 4 hours long. But we're in our fives, and already we're banking a lot of time because, yeah,
Yeah.
shown up on 2 lists now. That's an
Mm-hmm.
indicator for us, at least. It's a damn good movie.
Mm-hmm.
All right, very good. Well, Will, what was your number 5?
So just like you've got 2 Chris Hemsworth movies, I have 2 films that have Leah Seydoux in them this year, randomly. Was yeah, I realized that as I was like pulling up the IMDb's 5 minutes before this episode. So my number 5 is Dune Part 2, the second part of the Dune series by Denis Villeneuve. This one continues the story of Timothy Chalamet's Paul Atreides. This time he's working with the Fremen, and there is a lot of like intrigue and a lot of like, warring factions on this, the sandy planet that they find themselves on. But I think most importantly to the story, and what was so compelling about this to me, is this is a character who is sort of given the idea of, gosh, you're so great. You're going to liberate all of us one day, and sort of put on this pedestal as this savior character. And he embraces it. And I think in a lot of stories that are similar to this, that's that savior character that kind of finds himself amongst indigenous people is sort of celebrated and is a good hero. And here we get a character who, once he sort of starts making some of those decisions, you wonder, how good is this actually going to be? And the film does a really good job of pulling out some of those original, like kind of Frank Herbert themes that sort of show up in those stories. This is well shot. It's some of the best visual effects of the year. It's got great action. It's got great story. It's got great performances. It's just everything hits with Dune 2. As far as big blockbustery movies, this was my favorite of the year. So Dune 2, it is the goods.
Yeah,
Definitely
Will,
a big. Yeah, go ahead, babe.
This is a super strong pick. Unfortunately, when I said that the kink hotness that was Baby Girl pushed a film out of my top 10, it was this one. Sorry, Timothy Chalamet. Kink just squeaked you out by just a little bit.
Yeah. What's great about that, though, is it sounds like both you and I, so Furiosa was my one that got squeaked out at the last minute by a movie that's actually showing up later on the list, and yours was Dune 2. So I like that both of these kind of big films that we both enjoyed both just fell under the line. Yeah,
just by a little bit, right?
Yeah,
but yeah, really, really great film. Timothy Chalamet continues to do fantastic in these. I love the story of Dune. It's great to see part 2 play out. I don't know if we're getting part 3. I hope we are. Who the fuck knows? But really, really good pick. And real quick, too, I want to give a shout out to a very handsome young man named Mikey who is watching right now. Jim, to the discussion about Furiosa, he mentioned how much he loved Mad Max Fury Road. So, Mikey, you'll have to let us know if you saw Furiosa, and if you did, what you thought. But thanks for tuning in. Good to have you.
Yeah. Yeah, we loved Mad Max Fury Road too. I don't know how many years ago it was, 2, 3, but I know it was very high on all of our lists that year.
Yes, it was. I believe it made our top 10s of that year, or at least for one of us. We'd have to go back. I think we have a spreadsheet we can verify.
I'm kind of randomly flipping through as we're chatting just to see where.
So Mikey, this is your chance to go back, listen to our podcast on Mad Max Fury Road.
You know what?
South by. Yeah.
My spreadsheet doesn't go back that far. I do know that it was either my number 1 or my number 2 of that year. And I think you guys had it up there pretty high as well.
Yeah. Right.
Yep. Right. Indeed. Well, speaking of revisiting the years, my number 5 film did the same, but this time through the lens of Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. This is a film directed by Robert Zemeckis called Here. And like a stage play, it all takes place in one spot, but the scenery changes. Sometimes we're looking at the house that Tom Hanks grew up in, and he's digitally de-aged to look 17. It kind of visits different time periods throughout the film. Sometimes Tom Hanks and Robin Wright are elderly, and it's in the future. Sometimes we're even looking at colonial America, and the house isn't even there yet. But this film was a fucking emotional gut punch on many different levels for me. It's been accused of just being a nostalgia bait film because we see the aluminum Christmas tree in the 60s, and in the 80s we see rock posters and wood paneled TVs, and those member berries do evoke some emotional responses, but it was really the relationship between the Tom Hanks and Robin Wright characters that just grabbed me. And Jim, I actually thought a lot about our relationship while we were seeing this film. As of a few days ago, Jim and I have known each other for 16 years at this point. And babe, when I met you when I was 28, I was very different than I am now at 43.
Mhm.
And I can almost point to like just different periods over the last 16 years where we've both grown and changed, but like we're still together and meshing in new and different ways. And this movie, I think, demonstrated really well, I think, how relationships grow, evolve, and can change over time. So Robert Zemeckis, great fucking job with this one. You are my number 5 with Here.
Yeah, I especially appreciated it. Didn't make my list, by the way, but I especially appreciated how I think the ending kind of surprised me. We don't get necessarily the ending we might expect from this relationship, right? So, yeah, I really appreciated it. It is kind of I guess you could look at it and say, yeah, it's kind of centered around a gimmick, but I think what you come away with though is those emotions in the story, and that's what I think is stands out about Here.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, without the gimmick, that this particular story doesn't get told, right? Because
Yeah,
this is telling the story from a fixed location, and what it's like to see, time, both in a fixed place and also the people that kind of travel through that fixed place. What those little moment to moments are like.
yeah,
And you don't get that with a kind of a more traditional camera setting. You can't.
Mhm.
So,
and
the gimmick, the method is the method of delivery here is the moral, right? So,
Yeah.
and how all these things are connected to that one location. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that's kind of the gut punch. Like all these things that are seemingly, I mean, there are things outside of the Tom Hanks
Mhm.
Robin Wright relationship, but they all feel somehow connected, right, through this one place. And as somebody who's kind of interested in history, I often think when I'm in a place, like, what was this place like, you know, 200, 300, 1,000 years ago? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's interesting and this movie gives a little glimpse of that, which I appreciated.
Mhm. All right. Well, we're starting to get down to it. We've got
Yeah,
just 4 films left, and we've got some listener lists to share as well. We'll get to that. Just a
yeah.
reminder for everyone as we move through the final 4 films on our list and honorable mentions, you've still got some time. Drop some of your favorite films of 2024 in that live chat or the comments, and we may read some of those out. But, Jim, let's do it.
Number 4. And mine is one now. So the good thing about like the top of this list is I think we're going to be banking time. So these last 4, I think, are going to kind of fly by. Probably go faster than like the 7 through 10 spots because I think Cream kind of floats to the top, and we might have some that are one offs like on one person's list or not. But I think a lot of these might be films we've either talked about or are going to talk about. Anyway, my number 4 is a little blockbuster this year by the name of Wicked. Yeah,
Oh.
this one uh, starring, Ariana Grande, uh, Cynthia Erivo. They both do an amazing job as Glinda and Elphaba, of course. There's other folks in here, Jeff Goldblum, but really the movie revolves around these 2 characters, as does the story, the stage play, and yeah, this is a hard thing to pull off because it's a beloved stage play musical, and putting it on screen, putting musicals on screen sometimes has kind of like results that just kind of lie there and don't really do anything. This one, I think they did a really good job with. It's a rousing, basically first half of the story, the first act of uh, of the Wicked stage play, basically, with the second half coming next year. And I know we all can't wait for that. Um, so yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that and say Wicked was my number 4. I really dug it. We saw it like 3 times already. And it's now on streaming, I think,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which is awesome. Uh, Certainly a lot of folks in our community have caught up with this. It is a beloved property, um, mostly because of the stage musical production and
Mhm.
now because of the film. I think most people that I saw or that I heard from who loved the stage musical did like the film. So that's a feather in its cap or in
Jim,
I
its
I
hat.
go ahead.
I can only speak for the people on this podcast, but no one mourns the wicked movie being on your list this year. I have a feeling it might show up again somewhere else later. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be quiet for now, but I love this
Okay.
pick.
Yeah, didn't make my list, but I will say I absolutely I had a wonderful moment just a moment ago. You were saying that it was arousing, and then you paused for a second, and I
Hmm.
thought he's aroused by Wicked. Okay, oh,
Arousing.
a rousing, not
Well,
arousing. Yeah.
yeah.
So just wanted to lampshade that because I had fun hearing that. But no, this is a great pick. You know, Wicked's solid. The leads in this are a lot of fun. I especially like seeing Ariana Grande just be as fucking funny as she is in this. And of course, the music slaps and will always slap. So really good pick.
Hmm. Yeah.
For sure. And it looks like we have a comment back from Mikey who says, Furiosa is one of the coolest feminist symbols in modern films. Cinematography and art direction was top notch with a fire symbol. So there you go, Jim.
I have a Mad Max Fury Road Mondo poster in my living room. Like you have to like walk past it to get to my stairwell. So I love that. I love that because I get to enjoy that movie multiple times every day, every time I look up at that poster.
Hmm. Brings it all
Nice.
back to mind. Nice.
Mhm.
For
We ready?
sure. We're ready. Will, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is a movie that I saw at South by Southwest. We're big fans of South by Southwest on this show. We cover it. We've covered it for a decade now.
Yep.
And this movie is called Sing Sing. It is a movie starring Coleman Domingo as kind of the only professional actor in this. It's the true life story of this guy named Divine G, who's imprisoned at Sing Sing for a crime he didn't commit, and he finds some purpose for himself through joining this theater group with other incarcerated men, and they end up forming these bonds. They find purpose, they find strength with one another as they go through harrowing times and learn just how much art transforms them. A lot of the people that are in this movie playing sort of the people opposite Coleman Domingo are the actual people who graduated were released from prison from this particular theater group, and you got to see kind of in the credits some of the actual productions they put on. But I think the true standout in this, aside from Coleman Domingo, who's great and everything, is he is cast against an actor named Clarence Macklin, who sort of plays a newcomer who's a little more wary of what's happening with this whole theater thing, and also kind of, finds himself there. He is also one of the people that graduated from this program. And I mean, he goes against one of the great actors right now in Coleman Domingo and stands toe to toe with him on screen. This is an emotional powerhouse of a movie. It makes you feel frustrated at times at the system and how it can be, but it also just makes you feel empowered by the strength of humanity, and it brings a tear to your eye just seeing people finding strength through adversity. It's Sing Sing, and it is just such a gem of a movie.
Yeah, well, I remember being at South by Southwest last March, and the excitement around this movie was palpable to the point of like, if you missed like the first screening, like I know I did, and I think you did too, Will. I don't remember if you saw.
I was in the
first
second screening. Yeah.
Then it was like,
Mhm.
then it was like searching for the second and maybe a third and maybe a fourth screening, which I think it did get because it won one of the audience awards, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe jury awards. I'm not sure, but yeah. So seeing this film was a project in itself, and then to have it pay off like it did was wonderful. I'm so glad we saw it. Didn't quite make my list. Maybe recency bias has something to do with that. I don't know. I will say absolutely not. I don't go by recency bias, but yeah, Sing Sing's a great pick. I love Coleman Domingo. Can't wait to see more stuff that he's going to be doing. I need to go onto IMDb immediately and find out what he's working on. But yeah, great film, Sing Sing.
Super solid pick, Will, for sure. Didn't make my list. It was worth the 2.5 hours I stood outside in the cold waiting for the film at South by Southwest, though.
Oh,
So,
good.
yeah. Coleman Domingo, you brought me in and made me warm, and I appreciate you so much for that. Great one for sure. All right. I guess it's to me? Question mark. Yes.
Number 4.
My number 4, believe it or not, is a film about tennis players. It's a film starring Zendaya. It's a film directed by Luca Guadagnino, of course, who we love on this show, and also stars Mike Feist and Josh O'Connor. This movie is called Challengers. Now, full disclosure, Jim saw this movie before I did. It's not often that we see films apart necessarily, but this is one that he was like, "Hey, babe, do you want to go see this movie?" And I'm like, Zendaya,
This tennis movie about relationships.
tennis? No, I'm good. I have more Baldur's Gate 3 to play. I'm good. And then Jim came back and he was just raving about it. And then, Will, I think you were maybe raving about it. And then I saw 1,000 people on social media raving about it. And then I was like, okay. Well, I loved Call Me By Your Name. Maybe I should give this one a chance. And Jim was like, "Oh, I want to see it again. Let's go." And so we went and saw it in theaters. And I was blown away by it. Zendaya was fantastic in this. But above and beyond that, I think Mike and Josh just so believably played these two tennis players who are trying to figure out some of their like burgeoning sexuality and navigate their friendship and their competitiveness and
Boners,
bodily fluids, all those things. There's just a lot to appreciate in this film. The tennis is really just backdrop, right? I mean, it's like that
right.
game we play called Calico, that's like quilting and cats, but it's really like engineering puzzles and like cat and quilt drag. Like that's what this movie is, and it's probably one of the best relationship movies I've ever seen, period. I wasn't as big on queer in 2024, sorry, Luca, but Challengers absolutely just knocked it out for me. So number 4.
Yeah, this one ended up in my number 12 slot. Every time I think about this movie, though, it climbs more and more. At the beginning of the year, this was probably in my like 15 slot when I'd seen like half the movies I'd seen now. But every time I see something new, I'm like, I kind of like internally have like the Challengers test, and I'll go like, no, this is under Challengers. No, this is under Challengers. And it kept climbing. So honestly, you come back to me and we do this show again 6 months from now, this is probably climbed up to my top 5, because I think this one has not just a good movie in the moment, but it just leaves a lasting impression. And I will go on record to say that it has the best final like 20 seconds of a movie of the entire year. Like this movie ends,
the best reveal.
It ends on an absolute banger of a moment. So
that it does.
Yeah, great pick, babe. Are you ready to move on?
I think so. Let's do it.
Number 3. My number 3 is Luca Guadagnino's Challenge.
What?
I love this movie. I just love the deliciousness of like the relationships in this movie. It's kind of a love triangle between Tashi and I forget the two male lead character names, but played by Mike Feist and Josh O'Connor. But it's like, okay, we know they're kind of both into her. She's married, she ends up married to one, but she might have feelings for another one, but she disguises them. And then, wait, are the two dudes like into each other too? Like, is there some homoerotic tension going on? Yes, there is. It's a Luca Guadagnino movie, of course there is. And I just love the script of this film, how it's paced, uh, and all three performances are fantastic. Zendaya really opened my eyes to her acting chops, as well as Josh O'Connor, who I didn't know. I knew Mike Feist from West Side Story, and I noticed him in that movie, and I said, "This guy's got it." But in this movie, all three of them sing, and I don't mean sing like sing songs, but they're acting sings to me. So, yeah, Challengers is the deal in my number 3 spot.
You know, if a musical version of this did come out, though, I think I'd watch it, Jim.
Oh my God, it would be amazing.
Right?
I think it would be great to put music to
Volley,
this. Yeah.
volley, shot, shot, spike,
Serve,
shot,
serve.
volley.
Double fault.
Oh, goodness. Love that movie for sure. All right. Well, Jim, thank you so much for your number 3. Will, what's yours?
My number 3 has my favorite lead performance by an actress performance of the year, and that's in Sean Baker's Honora.
Yes.
Honora is a movie. So Sean Baker's the guy who gave us Red Rocket. He gave us the Florida Project. He gave us Tangerine. Just one of my favorite kind of like modern. I don't want to say cinema verite because it's not exactly that, but it's just more of like he's able to just sort of capture scenes that feel very real and organic to the moment. Long tracking shots of following people through scenes, stuff like that. Anyways, so this stars Mikey Madison, who's in that lead performance that I love so much. She's an exotic dancer escort who meets this son of a Russian oligarch, and the two of them fall head over heels in love with one another, and over a very quick love affair, they end up getting married. Well, the family doesn't like it, and they show up and they want to end her fairy tale wedding by forcing them to get
fucking oligarchs.
They want them to get the marriage annulled. Again, Mikey Madison is so good in this. I mean, she is just a live wire. Again, her and I would say Demi Moore in The Substance are the two kind of like best actress performances that I think are the strongest of the year. But this one, I think, edges it out a little bit more for me, predominantly because I think Mikey Madison is more at the core of this story than even Demi Moore was in The Substance. The supporting cast is all so good, especially a character named Igor, played by Yor Borsov. I won't really talk about his role in the film, but it's for someone who has not a ton of lines in the grand scheme of things, he does have quite an impact. I love this movie. It's funny, it's tense, it's kind of dark, but not like in a like violent or over the top type way. It's not quite as tense as like an Uncut Gems or something like that, but it still has the elements of those different things. It kept me at the edge of my seat, and it will you as well. It's Honora, and it's for me, the number 3 movie of 2024.
Great pick, Will. Great. And I'm gonna not say a lot about this movie right at this moment. At least.
Really,
babe? What do you have at number 3? Yeah.
I'll just say real quick, Honora did not make my list. Will, you mentioned the was it Igor or Igor? I forget how it's pronounced.
I don't remember.
Yeah, but
Igor.
Igor. That character was so compelling and very sexy as well. And I really, really enjoyed watching him on screen. But even beyond that, really, really good plot. It didn't even make it into my honorable mentions, but again, it doesn't make it a bad film. It's just there was so much good stuff. There's only so much room, but I'm glad it landed on your list. That's awesome. Jim, to your question, my number 3 is a film we already talked a little bit about. It is a sequel to another film from a few years ago and deals with complicated emotional themes like embarrassment, disgust, and above all else, fucking anxiety. Will, you mentioned earlier in the episode when Jim was talking about Inside Out 2, which of course is my number 3 pick, being medicated for anxiety. I am as well. I've been doing some really great like ketamine therapy work, and I almost don't have to take anxiety medication anymore, which is really great. But I really have to call this film out for making me feel really seen about anxiety. But even above and beyond that, giving me a mechanism to help other people understand, I think, what anxiety can be like for people who don't struggle with anxiety. Now, when like I'm all flustered and shit's going on, and Jim's like, "Are you okay, babe?" I'm like, "Anxiety at the console, the storm," and that's all I have to say. He knows exactly what's going on. He knows what I need in that moment, and for a lot of other people that were watching this film without going into spoilers, they're like, shit, like my cousin who has bad anxiety, that's what he's going through. Well, fuck, now I understand. Now I can be like, more supportive and more helpful. So, Jim, I love this movie for all the reasons that you called out. So we'll just bank some time, but I did just want to say, like, these Inside Out films, I don't know if we're going to get a third one where Riley is an adult and she's dealing with even more adult emotions. But I just fucking love the way that they bring emotion to the conversation and generate understanding. So good.
Yeah.
I'm
hear a
hearing
purr.
I knew it.
the purring is coming through the mic. It's great.
Is that Jordy or Poe?
Is it? No, it's Poe. Hey, Poe. She's rubbing herself all over the mic.
What were you going to say, Jim?
Yeah, great pick on Inside Out 2. As you know, we talked about it earlier. Really made an impression on us. And again, the just bringing up these kind of semi-taboo subjects about like personal feelings and especially anxiety. A lot of people more and more struggle with it. So I like to see that it's brought out in like a kid's movie where families can talk about it and not have too much of a stigma. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it's one we'll probably end up going back to. I'm sure there's going to be an Inside Out 3, and it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. One of the things I will say about that film is I hope there's been a lot in the news about Disney Pixar shying away from like LGBT characters. I don't know. I just hope that they don't do that in this series. I know that, we don't know this character that well. These movies aren't about sexuality, no doubt, but I just hope that they can find it within themselves to if that's a direction that they're going in, that they commit to it and not just kind of make it go away, So anyway, we'll see. We'll see what happens in the next movie.
Yep. Yeah.
Indeed,
we need lots of representation, and that includes in family
Right.
pictures.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Number 2, Jim.
Number 2. My number 2, Will, is Anora. This is Sean Baker's film, as you mentioned. I won't talk too much about it because you covered it really well. I love Sean Baker films. I love The Florida Project. I think it might have been my number 1 movie of that year. Don't quite remember exactly. This one is my number 2 this year. Also like Red Rocket and Tangerine. But I was trying to think earlier, like, what is it about Sean Baker's films that really resonate with me internally so much? And I think his superpower is taking characters that on the surface can be sort of dislikable and irritating and kind of in your face. If you think about like his movies, they're not necessarily instantaneously likable or empathetic characters, but by the end of the film, you have empathy for these characters. He knows how to build it in. He knows how to write it in. Um, and I love that. It's humanistic storytelling and humanistic filmmaking, and I just love it. So yeah, Nora is my number two. And those performances, like you said, well, especially Mikey Madison, I'll be pulling for her probably at the Oscars. I mean, there's a couple of other performances that I think could give it a run, but um, yeah, Honora is awesome.
All right. Excellent. Well, let's go to Will. Will, you're number two.
Number two.
All right. So when I was doing my list, there were a couple of hard spots for me. Of course, which movies to cut, which movies make it to honorable mention, and which don't. And then for me, also, my 1 and 2 slot might as well be a 1A, 1B. I kept going back and forth between which one of these was going to be my number 1 movie. But at the end of the day, I settled with Nickel Boys as my number 2. Nickel Boys is one that we were talking about. It's your 5 cent movie, and we were talking about you drove all that time.
Mhm.
I'm just making sure I'm picking up what you're putting down. We're talking about the same thing. Nickel Boys is the one you went and go saw. So this is based off of a Pulitzer Prize winning novel, and it tells the story of these 2 young African-American young men, boys, sort of like, in the kind of high school years, who are placed in a reform school in Florida. And the experience they have there is absolutely terrifying, not just because of the difference in the conditions between them and the white kids down the street who have a very different experience at their part of the reform school, but also because of the abuse and worse that these kids potentially face if they so much as think about getting out of line. One of the things that's incredibly compelling about this story is the way that it's told. The entire movie is shot in first-person POV, rotating between the 2 main characters. So for a good stretch, you're following one character from their perspective, but in different scenes, you'll swap over to another's, either showing a different variation on the same theme, or even going back and forth between the 2 as they're talking, but again, from their POV. It makes the film immersive. It makes the injustices they face feel more immediate and pressing. And that's especially important because while this is a fictional story on its base, it is based off of some actual terrible things that happened in an actual Florida boarding school that we only found out about in some relatively recent years. Nickel Boys is just everything that I want from a movie. It's emotional, it's harrowing, it's beautifully rendered. It does something new as far as film is concerned that I really haven't seen done exactly this way. It excited me. It saddened me. It just made me feel all of the feelings. The little guys at my console were going overtime, pulling all the levers as I watched Nickel Boys. It's very, very good. It is in theaters now. So this is one that you might need to either wait for, depending on where you live, or you might live near enough to a theater that has it. But either way, Nickel Boys is very, very worth it.
Yeah, well, this is the film that we drove 4 hours round trip for, and it was an interesting experience. The film, I don't think I was fully ready for the filmmaking concept that was employed in the storytelling here, but you were either on its wavelength or maybe not. Definitely a harrowing story for these 2 characters. I wasn't familiar with the source material at all, but I think it's pretty simple. Not simple. I think it's pretty evident what it's going to get into. pretty early on. We've heard these horror stories before, and to see it portrayed on screen, I thought the acting was great. Um, I don't know who the actor was who played the Nana, um, but I really dug her. I thought she was great. I thought her character
Mm.
was very compelling. I thought the scenes that she had with her grandson, I assume, Elrod, were fantastic. Like, had me glued to the screen for those scenes. Um, who
So
was
that
that?
was
Do you know?
Ingenue Ellis Taylor, who we also saw at the end of last year as Mama in The Color Purple.
Hmm.
And this year, she's also
Okay.
in a film that I haven't seen yet, but I've been hearing a lot of people talking about called Exhibiting Forgiveness. So she's
Okay.
definitely making the rounds in some pretty well received films.
Yeah, she was great here. And I think this is a film that's has a story to tell, and it takes a kind of a big swing in how it tells the story. Um, with its, I'll just say, like, its point of view. Let's just say
Hmm.
that. Um, so, and that leads to some great shots in the movie as well. Great, moments of storytelling in certain perspectives. But yeah, great pick, Will.
Indeed.
Babe, what's your number two?
Well, my number two was a very popular movie toward the end of the year.
Ah,
In fact, in seeing this movie, it made me so happy. I felt like my soul was defying gravity. Uh, okay, yeah, obviously, I'm talking about Wicked. Jim, I know this was your number four. I have to tell you, I really struggled with whether this was going to be my number one film. It was
I figured it
it
would
was
be.
so close, and I think for a hot second it was, but I did a little like soul wrestling, and my number one just it came down to the fact that I saw my number one film one more time than I saw Wicked in theaters, and that's what chose it for me. So this could almost be my number one film, but I have to say, the biggest surprise for me, Cynthia was phenomenal. Love her so much. We talked about that already. I want to talk just a little bit more about Ariana Grande in this film. I've checked her music out over the years. Not for me, just not my style. We saw her cousin Frankie on Big Brother several seasons ago, and I don't know if just like his craziness. Like
Frankie
I was
Grande.
just like every time I think of Ariana Grande, I think of Frankie, and then I'm like, ugh. Uh, so going into this movie, I'm like, gosh, she's playing Glinda later to be, Glinda. But she was a delight. Absolutely just phenomenal as Glinda. And I think what I respect most, she put out an interview shortly after the movie came out, saying that director John Chu wanted to do a more Ariana Grande style version of Popular. And the original composer who helped with the music on this was totally on board. They were starting to write that pop version of the song. And she said in her Glinda voice, no, absolutely not. She wanted to be the Glinda that she grew up with, seeing on stage. She wanted to honor Kristen Chenoweth, and holy fucking shit, did she do an amazing job at it. Um, her toss toss and her sounds. I love them so
Yeah,
much, and as much as I love the original Broadway recording, and Jim, we may have a disagreement on this now in our house, but when I go
we
to
might.
listen to Popular now, I find myself playing the Ariana Grande version more than the Kristen Chenoweth version. And I don't know. That's interesting to me because I've been listening to the other version for so long. And anyway, from the sets to the cinematography to the music, which obviously is incredible. It's from the Broadway play. This movie is just completely amazing on every level. I can't wait to see part two next year, Wicked for Good. And in fact, dropped more money than probably we should have on Wicked tickets up in
Oh my
Tempe
God.
for March because my pup had never been introduced to Wicked before, didn't know anything about it. He's from another country, and he saw the movie and was just in love with it. And he's like, I gotta wait a year for part 2. I'm like, no, you don't. It's playing in Tempe. So we're all taking a road trip up there to see it ahead of the second movie coming out. And I'm super stoked. Can't wait.
That'll be fun. You mentioned how we have sometimes musical disagreements, and this might be one of them. Like I prefer the original Broadway version of some of these songs, and you prefer the movie version, especially Popular. So from now on, it'll be called. We'll each call our version that we like the good version of Popular.
Like we do with Chicago, right? Like old Chicago and good Chicago music.
The band Chicago. I like the older, more rocking Chicago, and Brad likes the newer, more like
power ballady Chicago,
like power ballady. Peter.
Well, listen, as
Chicago.
the impartial third person here, that the tiebreaker, I will say that if we're comparing Brad's good Popular versus Jim's good Popular, you are both right.
There you go. That's the
They're
answer.
both stellar versions of that song.
William Lindis, the great uniter of the Movie Bears podcast. You're just racking up titles every year, Will. Redoubtable William Lindis, the great uniter. Totally.
We'll
Good pick, babe. Good pick.
All right. Well, listen up, y'all. You might be thinking it is time for our number one films of 2024.
Number one.
But
not time for that yet. Sorry. We're going to make you wait a little bit. You're going to have to be good boys, good girls, good people, good folks, because we have some honorable mentions that we want to call out. So we're going to start with Jim. We'll move through the list, do our honorable mentions, and then we'll get to our number ones. Jim.
Very quickly, here they are. My honorable mentions that were considered for my list but didn't quite make it. Conclave was a movie this year that I really dug. The Substance, which I think we've talked about already on this show. I wanted to find a place for that, and I didn't. Will and Harper, the documentary with Will Ferrell and his friend Harper Steele. One documentary, Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, was great this year. Ghostlight. Now we have a series. I have a series of South by films that we saw last year that unfortunately just missed out on my list. Ghostlight, Arcadian, Nick Cage horror movie that is really, really good and didn't get enough attention. Bob Trevino Likes It, which is still yet to get its release. I Wish You All the Best, another LGBT queer-based trans film, which I really liked. My Dead Friend Zoe, which is going to be getting a release very soon. Another documentary, Beatles 64. Baby Reindeer. These are the kind of the cheats. These are not. These were series.
I'm arching an eyebrow.
One more.
Puliaf, go.
And Baby Reindeer was the goods. It wasn't a movie, but it totally could have been. And one that I wish I could have put on my list, but it didn't get released. So I felt bad about it. Would have made my list. It's called Secret Mall Apartment. We saw this at South by Southwest. I loved it. It's an amazing film that is, you think is one thing, it's another. It's a 5-star movie for me, and I'm just waiting for the day that it actually gets released. So those are my honorable mentions.
All right, awesome. We're doing these rapid fire. Will, what are yours?
Yep. All right. We talked about Furiosa. That was my number 11. And we talked about Challengers at my number 12. Conclave, it's the goods. It's on Netflix at 13. A Real Pain. We should talk about that more on this show. I think you guys would like that if you haven't seen it yet. Hundreds of Beavers is one of the funniest movies I saw this year. Nosferatu, another animated movie in Memoir of a Snail. That was my actually second favorite animated film of the year. All We Imagine Is Light, Civil War, and Ghostlight.
All right.
Nice. We do have some crossover there.
Yes, we do.
Indeed. I didn't know we were doing 50 honorable mentions, so I only picked 5. But mine,
I only did 25. I'm sorry.
I did
Mine-
less than Jim. I did my top 10 and my bottom 10, or not my top 10, my
Okay.
second to 10. Yeah.
So mine, real quick, because we're almost at 2 hours, man. Dune Part 2,
I'm sorry.
Will and Harper, Fly Me to the Moon, Civil War, and Superman, the Christopher Reeve story.
Hell of a
Nice.
set of good picks.
Wow.
Indeed.
We've got a great year, and unfortunate these didn't make the top of the list, but we can only do 10
Right?
and 25 honorable mentions.
All right. Let's close out those 10. It is time for our number ones. Jim, let's start with you.
My number one's already been talked about. I told you the theme for my list this year was animation, and Flow is my number one movie of the year. This is actually the only 5-star movie that made my list this year. I'm a tough rater. This movie, I didn't know much about it. It has a cat in it, cool, but it's so much more than that. This movie's like a little miracle, if you ask me. It's a movie without dialogue. It's got a great score. The animation is beautiful, and it's such an immersive story about community. It's about community, spirituality, trust in friends. It's so layered, this story. Some people might say it's about global warming, blah 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 blah. I didn't really see it as that, but I love this film. It's like a little gem, you know what I mean, that I can hold on to going forward. And no other film made me feel that way this year. It's called Flow. Number one.
I could see it. I know, we saw this in theaters twice. We bought it when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
You've watched about 8 hours of interviews, I think, with the director. And
Oh yeah.
I had a feeling it was going to be Flow. And as we moved up your list, Jim, and you did talk about it more and more and more, I was like, yep, I bet that's his number one. So not surprised at all. Incredible pick. So good.
And I will say that so far, and this may end up being the case for the entirety of the list unless something dramatic changes at the end, I think this might be our only film that is on all three of our lists. So that tells you something. This, when we talked about that Venn diagram of movies that hits all of us, Flow was that movie.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
All right, Jim. Incredible top 10 list. Thank you. Will, what's closing out your top 10 at your number one slot?
So this is a movie that I saw fairly early in the year, kind of in the first third of the year. And it's been sitting at my number one almost unchallenged all year, with the exception of Nickel Boys giving it a last-minute run for its money. But at the end of the day, I Saw the TV Glow is still the best movie I saw of last year. This is the second film by director Jane Schoenbrunn, and it stars Justice Smith as a teenager who is in the suburbs and is unsure about kind of his place in his life and about himself. And he meets a friend at school while they're in sort of like, middle school, kind of early high school, who is a big fan of this show that's sort of like a blend between Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Ren and Stimpy.
No, not Ren and Stimpy. It's sort of a blend between, Are You Afraid of the Dark and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and maybe even a little bit of like The Adventures of Pete and Pete, which are all shows that came from a very specific, like kind of early 90s to mid 90s sort of like time period in terms of when they crested and when they peaked. Buffy a little later, but whatever. But the important thing about this is a film that is about, one, the power of media for us to help find ourselves. The way that we're represented on screen helps us learn who we are. We've talked about this multiple times on this episode alone, how we see ourselves reflected in anxiety, or we see ourselves reflected in this character or that. This movie is about that, but it's also about the power of movies to help you not just get that representation reflected back at you, but also for you to find it in yourself and reflect it back out into the world, and how, it's not necessarily too late at any time to figure out who you are and how to let that out. This movie brings me to tears, like multiple places in this film. It is just powerfully done, creatively done. It's just everything that I want in a film. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. I watched it tonight before we got on the air. I kind of wanted to sort of like revisit my favorite film before we went and talked about it. And yeah, it got me again. It got me again. Like, 2 hours ago, it got me again. So I saw the TV glow. God damn, this movie.
Yeah, well, great pick. I remember how much you loved this one after you saw it, and we went out and saw it. Didn't quite make my list. I think, is it true that does this film resonate maybe with certain demographic, age-wise, you think?
So
There's a lot of nostalgia, like touchstones in this film, I think.
yes and no, because it does kind of fall upon that, but in a way that I feel like can be a little more universal. And what I mean by that is, I know of a contingent of younger than us, because this would be sort of like our age group, like Brad, that would probably be most nostalgic for the stuff that's sort of showing up in this. But there is a contingent of people kind of like 15, 20 years younger than us, who are younger trans people who watch this film as a means of identifying and finding themselves, who they weren't alive for this stuff, but they're able to sort of see some of those things. It reminds me of like when you watch an older movie like Cinema Paradiso or something like that, that is about the power of certain types of stories on people at certain epochs. Like, this is about that, but it also feels very universal, sort of in how you relate to that material, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Awesome. Babe, time for your number one.
All right. My number one is also a movie that I rewatched today. I actually watched it in 3D for the first time on my Vision Pro. So I got to experience the film in a brand new way. This film stars Kit Connor, Pedro Pascal, and Lupita Nyong'o. It is an animated film. We saw Wicked in theaters 3 times, but I saw The Wild Robot in theaters 4 times in 2024. There is so much that I love about this movie, from its incredible score, including a motif that has been stuck in my head since this came out. Was it October, November? I forget. But I listen to this score all the time. I've even included some of the tracks in some of the ketamine therapy that I've been doing, and I think that's been pretty awesome to be able to do. But the vocal performances in this film were just fantastic. Not just the big stars, but like Bill Nighy was Longneck, one of the geese in this film. It was super fun. In any event, this film deals a lot with the concept of like being of service to someone or a community, or being relied on by other people. And it deals a lot with concepts of like parenthood and chosen family. And this movie only made me cry like 8 times the first time I saw it. Second time we went to see it, I'm like, well, I already know the 8 times that made me cry last time. I probably won't cry, in any of those. And I cried all 8 times, all 4 times I saw the movie. And in fact, I can just start to hear parts of a motif from one of the songs, and I automatically well up, just getting the flood of just emotion, just thinking about this film. So I actually started reading the books. I'm almost done with the first book. I really hope that they continue to make more of these films. There's like 8 books or something. Probably won't get 8 movies out of it, but I would love more out of this world. So The Wild Robot, a film that when we saw the trailer originally, I was like, a robot in the woods with a duck? Question mark? Ugh, whatever. But it blew me away. And if you haven't seen it yet, I hope it blows you away too. It was my number one film of 2024.
Great pick. And with that, Brad, if you're interested in hearing it, I have crunched the numbers and I now know our Movie Bears podcast ranked list for our top 10. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah. So, Will, can you just explain a little more in depth for our listeners what this actually is?
So, as we've been doing this episode, I've been writing down all of our films and assigning them a point value. A 10th place spot is worth 1 point. First place spot is worth 10 points, and sort of like tiered in between. Added them up, sorted them top to bottom, and our number 10 pick is Sing Sing. Ninth place is Furiosa. Nice. Eighth is Nickel Boys. Seventh is I Saw the TV Glow. Sixth is The Wild Robot, which is actually tied fifth and sixth for The Wild Robot and Inside Out 2. Fourth place is Challengers. Third place is Wicked. Second place is Anora. And first place, no surprises because it was the only one ranking up points from all of us, is Flow.
Wow.
Nice.
There you go.
Very good, Will. Bill, thank you for putting that together.
Appreciate it.
You know I love a spreadsheet.
I got to tell y'all, Will, it's like something out of Minority Report. Like we can see him editing the spreadsheet in real time as we go, like keeping track of all the picks and the points. And it's a thing of beauty. So, Will, thanks for doing that, as well as putting together lists from our listeners, which we're very going to quickly read through some of these. But before we do, Will, Jim, it took us 2 hours and 2 seconds, but we did it. Our top 10 of 2024, all phenomenal films. This is my favorite show of the year as well, even though it's about last year, but whatever, it's 2024, right? Thank you for all the thought y'all put. I know how hard it is to come up with these lists, and this is pretty damn special. Well done.
Yeah.
All right. Listener lists. I have the honor of reading through friend of the show, Bruce Perky's list, and I'll start at number 10 and end at number 1. 10 was Ghost Light, then Exhibiting Forgiveness, Kneecap, Hundreds of Beavers, that shows up again, Red Rooms, The Last Stop in Yuma County, Anora, Heretic, Flow, and one we didn't really talk about, but his number 1 film was The Substance, which did get a Demi Moore mentioned earlier. She was incredible in that movie. Really solid list, Bruce.
And I get the pleasure of celebrating Brando Glade's list. I'm also going to count it down at number 10, A Complete Unknown. Then number 9, Love Lies Bleeding. 8 is Crossing. 7 is Gasoline Rainbow. Number 6 is, hey, it's I Saw the TV Glow. 5 is Challengers. We talked quite a bit about that one in this episode. Number 4, we didn't talk about, but we did talk about in a recent episode, Nosferatu. Number 3 is All We Imagine Is Light. Number 2 is The Brutalist. And his number 1 pick of the year is Christmas Eve at Miller's Point.
Oh, another solid list.
There's some names, there's some movies on here that I'm going to have to do some research on because I don't recognize some of them. That's cool. That's awesome because if somebody thinks enough about a movie to put it their number 1 movie, there's got to be something that I need to find out about it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Should I read Sammy's list?
Go for it.
Sammy, good friend of the show and a good friend outside the show, our friend Sam White. Let me read his top 10 from 10 to number 1. Number 10 is Dune 2. Number 9, Civil War. I don't think we talked much about that movie.
It was one of my honorable mentions.
Oh, it's on your honorable mention. Okay. And another one we saw at South by last year. Number 8 is Queer. Number 7, Anora. Number 6, My Old Ass. Everyone's talking about.
Or is it Sam's old ass?
No, it's it's My Old Ass. Number 5 is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Number 4 is His Three Daughters, which is another film I did see that was really good. Let me see. That was History Daughters was number 4. Number 3 is The Brutalist. Number 2 is Kinds of Kindness, one I didn't get to see, and number 1, Challengers. His number 1 is Challengers.
Excellent list.
Great
White.
pick.
If you remember, Sammy came on the show and talked about Queer with
Sure
us,
did.
which was awesome.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So good. All right. And I will close out our listener lists with a list from Bill Harris of Green Screen of Death podcast, one of our friend shows, sister shows, whatever you want to call it. Missed running into he and Adrian, but his list, number 10, Ghostlight. Number 9, The Substance. 8, Honora. 7, Furiosa. 6, Strange Darling. 5, A Complete Unknown. 4, Civil War. 3 was Flow. 2 was Dune 2. And his number 1 film of 2024 was Nickel Boys.
Very good. Very good. And it's always good to hear from all of these folks. We're so thankful for anybody who participates enough and thinks about us enough to contribute to the show. It's great seeing Bill Harris on here because if you remember earlier in the show, I talked about a 6-hour movie. Like a 3.5-hour movie is nothing, not a 6-hour movie.
Oh, yeah.
The 6-hour movie I saw was based on, was watched because of homework I got from the Green Screen of Death podcast. It was a movie called The Best of Youth, which Bill Harris brought to homework. And so glad I watched that. I really love that film. So thanks, Bill, for your list and for a 6-hour movie experience.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well,
I was just going to say, I love this show each year, and I love that, this is a conversation, some people look at their lists as these end all be all type things, or make their lists feel, I don't know, unceremoniously competitive or anything like that. And that's not the energy we bring to this show, right? What we're doing here is we're just having a conversation about celebrating these films. And I love that it's not just my list and your list and your list, but our listeners have given us, year after year after year, additional films that may not have made our lists because they saw them a different way than we did, or may not have made the list because we haven't seen them. And now I've got new great movies to put on my watch list. So thank you for being a part of the Movie Bears podcast. Everyone that contributes, you're an honorary member in each one of these episodes as your picks get read on the air, because you are helping to enrich my life by giving me more movies to make my life better.
Indeed. And in fact, we have some last second entries from Harry Otter in the chat. Mikey, I'll read these off. He says Substance and Nosferatu were standout films for him, and Demi Moore really deserved that Golden Globe for The Substance. Yeah. R.I.P. That Golden Globe for Demi Moore, but totally deserving for sure. But that's it. That puts the capstone on these lists. Will, I'm looking at the best of MBP tab in this spreadsheet that you started back in 2018 for us. So, gosh, do the math. That's a lot of years. And there are just so many movies from 2018 forward that, I want to go back and watch again.
I know.
Annihilation, Roma, Onward, Language Lessons, The Color Purple. I mean, there's so many films. I feel like we need to publish this whole list. Coda, The Iron Claw from last year, right?
Gosh, it would be fun even if we just did a rewatch of our number ones for the last 7 years. Annihilation, Marriage Story, Dick Johnson Is Dead, Coda, Top Gun Maverick, All of Us Strangers, and Flow. That's a damn good list of movies.
It really is. That's awesome. So cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just a heads up, everybody. We're going to let you know how to connect with us here in just a sec. We are off next week. Both Will and Jim are traveling for work. We'll be out of town. I will be the bachelor here on my couch. I just found out that Baby Girl is coming to streaming next week, and a friend of mine here in the kink community, friend of ours, really wanted to be able to see it and was not able to get to it in theaters. So she's going to come over. We have another friend, Kevin, who may be joining us. And Jim, am I going to have to put trash bags down on the couch for Mel?
Could get wet. It could get a little wet.
Moist.
Oh my.
A little moist.
Anyway, I'm excited to be able to revisit that one in just a week. But we are off next week, so no new episode, but we will be back with you all. You know, as long as nothing crazy happens, we'll be back with y'all on the 4th of February with our superlatives. You might be thinking, how boring is it going to be for you to hand out the MBP awards when you just did your top 10 of 2024? But we have crazy off the wall categories like hottest on screen moment and best hell yeah moment that you just, you don't get in the Oscars or a top 10 show. So be on the lookout for that.
You should, but you don't.
And then I think our plan the week after that, 2/11, is to get me drunk while watching The Princess Bride.
That's the plan. Yes, we're going to do that. So bring your spirits, your drink of choice to the episode and play a drinking game along with us. Every time an awesome moment appears in this movie, or every time Brad shares a story about how much a specific scene means to him, take a shot and see at the end of the day if you can still stand up.
And for context, I always watch that movie, during the month of my birthday, and it's really cool that you guys want to do that one. So if one of you wants to host, we'll figure that out. I'm not going to try and host the show drunk.
No. It's your birthday. Someone else can drive.
I take no responsibility for what I say on air, by the way. It was Will's idea, so there you go. Anyway,
gonna be fun.
Jim, where can folks connect with you between now and our MVP award show in a couple weeks?
Letterboxd, where you can see my list of my top movies of 2024. Under my username there on Letterboxd is at JJP Out West, and find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right, thank you. Will, how about you?
All right, so I'm only a few places of note these days. Facebook, for the time being, look for William Lindis there, sort of like the social personal stuff. I'm having a lot more fun over on Blue Sky. I'm at the Movie Bear there. And then Letterboxd, it's great. It's just movies. It's all movies all the time, baby. Lists and reviews and star ratings and all sorts of stuff like that. Look for the Movie Bear there. Give me a follow. I'll follow you back.
All right, excellent. You can also find me on Facebook, although recent events have me questioning how long I'll stay. Look for Brad Harris. I'm the one with Chubb, Chaser, Bear, Dolphin, Wolf, whatever friends in common with you. Send a message first so I know you aren't a clever, hairy chest presenting bot designed to get through my filters. And you can also find me on Letterboxd at iBradPro, like iPad Pro, but with my name, because I think I'm clever. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. For those of you who submitted your picks to the show, again, thanks for putting some time into those, sending those our way. We still want to hear your picks, though. If you're listening through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., find us on YouTube, find us on Facebook, find us wherever you like to find us. Drop us your lists, and we'll respond. We want to hear those. Otherwise, we will see you all in a couple weeks. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.